Hello and welcome to another episode of Crabby Morning. My name is Dillon and I'm joined with...
Kayla.
John.
And Guillermo. I'm just kidding, it's Liam.
And today we are going to start part 1 of our October collection for Halloween, for Crabby Morning.
Ooh, spooky.
So,
Spooktober.
I think what would really be nice to start this podcast out with is a few facts about Halloween or October in general. And I know Kayla has prepared a little bit about that topic.
All right, welcome to Kayla's segment of Halloween. Give it up for Kayla.
Woo! Yeah.
Woo!
I have a little bit of fun fact / history about Halloween. But before I begin, who here knows the origin of the jack-o'-lanterns?
I do not.
I do not.
You, John?
I do, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll see.
Proceed.
I found some information on where jack-o'-lanterns originated and like what they were originally used for. So, did you know that jack-o'-lanterns used to be turnips, really big turnips, that Irish people would carve faces into them to ward off the spirit, Stingy Jack.
Stingy Jack.
I
You know the story of Stingy Jack?
I have the legend of Stingy Jack,
Oh.
but I'll start from the beginning. So, as you know, pumpkins with ghoulish faces and illuminated by candlelights are a sure sign of the Halloween season. In practice, decorating of jack-o'-lanterns originated in Ireland. So, in Irish folktale, a man named Stingy Jack made a deal with the devil to have a drink with him. So,
hot.
Jack didn't want to pay for his drink, so he convinced the devil to turn himself into a coin that Jack can use to buy their drinks. So once the devil did so, Jack decided to keep the money and put it into his pocket, next to the silver cross, which prevented the devil from changing back to his original form. Jack eventually freed the devil under the condition he would not bother Jack for 1 year, and that Jack should die, he wouldn't claim his soul. The next year, Jack tricked the devil into climbing into a tree to pick a piece of fruit. While he was up in the tree, Jack carved a sign of the cross into the tree bark so that the devil could not climb back down. And Jack made the devil promise not to bother him for 10 more years.
What a butthead.
No. He's just a smart guy.
So, after Jack died, as the legend goes, God would not allow such an unsavory figure into heaven. The devil, upset by Jack's trick that he had played on him, and keeping his word to not claim his soul, would not even allow Jack into hell. So, he sent Jack off into the dark night with only a burning coal to light his way. Jack put the coal into a carved-out turnip and has been roaming the earth with it ever since. The Irish began to refer to this ghostly figure as Jack of the Lantern, then put simply, Jack-o'-lantern.
Oh.
Wow.
So, later on, in Ireland and Scotland, people began to make their own versions of Jack's lanterns by carving scary faces into turnips and potatoes and placing them into windows or near doors to frighten away Stingy Jack and other evil spirits. In England, large beets were used. Immigrants from these countries brought the jack-o'-lantern tradition with them when they came to the United States. They soon found that pumpkins, a fruit native to America, would have made a perfect jack-o'-lantern.
Oh. That was actually a pretty good story.
Yeah, that was really interesting, to be honest.
Stingy Jack.
Yeah.
did not know that was the original purpose of a jack-o'-lantern.
I know. I was there, so it's true.
Yeah.
I was the.
You're Stingy Jack.
I was the tree.
Oh.
But yes, I think that I want to try carving a face into a turnip.
What about a potato?
No,
They
I
also-
tried using something last year. No, it was a red bell pepper.
What?
But it flattened itself to the point where it was unrecognizable as to what it was originally. Because we left it out like a jack-o'-lantern, as you do. It also cooked from the inside faster than. Anyways, I think that that's one of my favorite traditions is carving a pumpkin. But what is the most craziest pumpkin drawing you've ever made?
I guess I would say I'm not artistically talented, but I'd say I made a pretty good butt on a
Butt?
pumpkin. Yeah. It was pretty good.
I'm thoroughly impressed by like some of the people that can make intricate designs in jack-o'-lanterns.
Yeah, that stuff is crazy. I can just watch that for hours on YouTube.
Like they can make witch designs of like them like on the broom.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff is just super impressive. And like this like 3 spiders. I think I saw one that was like that.
Yeah.
It's all just playing with like the light that goes through the pumpkin. So if you like cut deeper into the pumpkin, more light shows, so then you can add more layering that way.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite design was this past year, and I was in Italy, and not many people make jack-o'-lanterns in Italy, but I was able to find a pumpkin, and it was Halloween, and I was the only boy who was dressed up. I dressed up as an octopus.
Oh.
And out with me, I bought the first jack-o'-lantern any of my friends had ever seen in real life, which was a little weird. I'm sure some people celebrate Halloween, but it isn't really celebrated to the extent that it is in America.
That's true.
Carved with eyeballs, 8 legs, little suction cup details, and all made using my grandma's rusty kitchen knife that had been used since the 1950s, so it is very dull. I was fantastic.
I'm pretty sure America is the main country that really recognizes Halloween as extensive as we do.
We celebrate a lot of holidays to the max.
Yeah.
We do, definitely.
Yeah.
What the heck is Groundhog's Day? I still don't even know.
It's supposed
But
to like
every year I talk about it in school, and I still have no idea. I still don't believe it's an actual thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, John, the groundhog dictates if we have a longer winter or a shorter winter.
Wait, what was that? Sorry guys, I just got scared. Speaking of scared,
Oh my gosh.
Dillon has prepared something for our first episode of our October series. He's actually written us a scary
Spooktober.
story. Dillon's a writer of sorts, so he has created a masterpiece.
I wouldn't say a masterpiece.
Well, he's made a spooky story to tell us today in our first episode of
Spooktober.
Spooktober, the
Also,
series.
also to add to what John is saying, we're going to have 4 parts to our October collection, and each of them, I'm going to start off with my own story, but each of the other Crabby Morning members are going to have their own like little story to add to the end of each of those podcasts. But today is going to be my scary story, and it is actually a revision of a story that I wrote 2 years ago, but I decided to go back to it for
That's
this
scary.
podcast
Going
and
into the past.
yes, and rewrite it. So
Get comfortable.
get comfortable, everyone.
All right, hang on. All right, I'm good.
Try not to scream.
This story is titled "The Value of Wetlands."
Nice.
Curiosity is a dangerous word. That's what led me here, after all, to this old, damp bunker. I'm a psychiatrist. About an hour or so ago, I drove to the apartment of one of my patients who had called me out of nowhere. He said he was distressed and needed to talk to me. His name was Michael, and he was a frail man with dark hair and beady eyes. It was strange to hear from him, given I hadn't talked to him in 3 years. On the drive over there, I couldn't understand what might have been troubling Michael. His case had been dismissed. I pondered this as I walked to his doorstep. Michael opened the door immediately and ushered me inside. He sat me down in his recliner and told me his story. I did not know what to make of it. It was so detailed and bizarre that I couldn't really muster up anything to say. I eventually told him that I would schedule an appointment with him and we would discuss it further. He agreed and told me that his brother was going to pick him up soon and take him for a late-night walk in the park. He hoped that would calm his nerves. While heading home, I realized that I was about to pass the very same area where Michael's story took place. It was an old bunker off the side of the road, covered by tall grass and wet marsh. Then, at that moment, my curiosity struck. I had to see what was down there. I pulled over to the side of the road, grabbed my phone, and started walking through the grass to the rusted metal door. As I reached the entryway, my heart sank as I looked down at the long, dark staircase leading to the bottom. I took a deep breath and exhaled, taking gentle steps onto the concrete. It was abnormally dark down there, like something had drowned out all the light that was present. My footsteps were the only noise that were being made in the foreboding corridor. I walked into the first room, along the hallway. Inside was a single chair with some medical equipment sprawled across a table nearby. There was some kind of metal helmet hooked up to a machine on the back of this chair. On the walls were x-rays of different people's skulls. Their brains were circled in red marker. That's when Michael's story dawned on me. I walked across the hall to the door at the end. I opened it to find an empty room with 2 beds on each side and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Michael had said he woke up in this room. He added that he didn't remember how he got there, only that his last memory was being at the grocery store a few miles away. Eventually, a man came to the door, grabbed Michael, and dragged him across the hall to the room with the chair. Once inside, they hooked him up to the machine and turned it on. Immediately, Michael was in agonizing pain. He said it felt as if his brain was being crushed from the inside. After a few horrific minutes, they took the helmet off of him and began to drag him out of the room. They took him up the stairs, threw him out the front door. Michael collapsed onto the tall grass, with the man still standing behind him. Michael managed to look behind him to see that the man was in the middle of murmuring something. In fear, Michael got up and ran through the marsh back to the main road. Unfortunately, Michael could not make out what the man said to him, nor what anyone else in that bunker was saying. What they didn't know was that Michael is deaf. He'd been that way since he was a child, in fact. It made me wonder if they knew that or not. Either way, I figured it didn't matter. It was then that I realized that there was one more room I had not entered yet. There was another door halfway across the hall with a worn bronze door handle. I decided to walk over to it and peek inside. I grabbed the knob and carefully creaked the door open. Inside was a single desk, accompanied by an office chair behind it. It looked extremely out of the ordinary, especially for a bunker. On top of the table, I noticed that there was a stack of papers. My curiosity struck again as I picked up the documents and started reading them. They detailed multiple cases from a large group of people, all giving general information about the subjects. From the way these documents described them, I quickly realized that these people had been kidnapped. Some files detailed them being grabbed just outside of town at local gas stations. Others described them being taken straight out of their cars after blocking the road so they would stop. As I read on, the documents began to describe the process these people were put through. The experiment was called the trigger hypothesis. It involved subjects being strapped to the machine in the other room, which would begin coding their brain. Once the procedure was over, a single word would be used to trigger a specific response. This response was that whenever the subject heard the word wetlands, they would immediately go mad and start attacking whoever they saw. The effect was said to be irreversible, leaving anyone afflicted absolutely insane. I put down the papers in horror. My chest began to feel heavy as I began to sink to the floor. Suddenly, a scream pierced through the room. I stood straight up again, and as I began to choke on air, I could see a silhouette in the dark. My flashlight barely illuminated the figure as it swayed from side to side. It rushed towards me, banging its limp arms on the glass pane that was between us. Its eyes were devoid of anything. All it knew was that I was another person, and it did not like that. I leaned against the desk as my breathing began to pick up. It couldn't seem to get to me, but its persistence in trying to get out sent me shivers. As I watched the subject continue to bang on the glass, I noticed that something else was in the room with him. There were words inscribed on the walls. It took me a moment to realize that they were the same words written over and over again on the walls and ceiling. They all said wetlands in bright red. Then something else dawned on me. The documents also stated that reading the word wetlands could also trigger the response. Michael was still in the park with his brother. I had to get to him now before something happened. I ran out the door, down the hall, and back up the stairs. I sprinted through the marsh just as Michael did, and got into my car. I then proceeded to floor straight to the park. At the park entrance, I could see that the gates had been shut. They had just closed. Michael wasn't responding to my texts. I had to assume that him and his brother were still in there somewhere. I parked my car on the side of the road and walked past the gate. There were only a handful of streetlights illuminating the parking lot. I already knew from visiting this place prior that the trails did not have lights at all. I would have to continue using my phone as a source of light. I picked a trail and began walking through the trees and bushes. As I carried on, I could hear the faint crackle of dry leaves from beneath me. After a few minutes, the sound seemed to strangely double in volume. It almost sounded like someone was behind me. I turned around and shined my phone in that direction. There stood Michael. His face was blank, except for his slightly widened eyes. He looked at me as if he didn't know who I was and was surprised to see another person in the park. I could hear his heavy breathing as he continued to look at me. Then I noticed something odd about his shirt. It seemed to have a new pattern decorated on it. I then realized that it wasn't a new pattern at all. It was blood. I ran off the trail straight through the woods. Michael could be heard right behind me screaming loudly and incoherently. My legs felt like they were about to give out again, but knowing what might happen to me if I stopped kept me going. The screaming persisted as I crossed through more trails. Michael never seemed to run out of breath. I decided to stop and hide under a nearby bush. Michael ran straight past me and kept running in the same direction. Knowing Michael could not hear me, I got back up and started moving quickly away from the area. I found myself near a broken walkway that looked like it hadn't been used in years. The wood was rotted in various places, with parts of the walkway being on an incline. It seemed that I was just on the outskirts of the park, possibly in an area that was off limits. I decided to follow it to find my way back. It stretched on for a while through another marsh before leading to the end of the platform. On it was a single plaque. Yet again, my curiosity succeeded. I climbed to the top of the platform and read the plaque. It read, "The value of," but before I could finish, something hit me in the back of my head and knocked me out completely. I woke up in a strange, damp room. There were people I didn't know surrounding me. They had just finished strapping me to a chair with a large metal helmet hanging overhead. I looked around to see x-rays of various people's skulls that were circled in red marker. Then it dawned on me once again. I recognized this room.
Ooh. Spooky.
What'd y'all think?
I really liked that.
Really?
Yeah, I liked when he was investigating the bunker and was kind of investigating, seeing what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then especially with him running through the marshland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I originally wrote that, it was the guy wasn't a psychiatrist. It was like a bunch of colleagues or like college students figuring out something. But I thought it was more interesting with a guy that, you know, was more of a professional in something, trying to figure out what was going on. But you guys have any more thoughts?
For a second, I thought, what was his name? Michael?
Yeah.
Crazy Michael?
Yeah.
I thought he just happened to have like an electric chair and was just using it to kill people, not to install a trigger word.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting touch.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he made sleeper agents. They made sleeper agents, and like the trigger words, the wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I vibe with that.
What about you, John? What do you think?
Well, I kind of like these scary stories, but I did fall asleep.
Oh,
What?
Sorry.
Oh my gosh, John.
You can't keep me awake.
I have a question though.
What do you got?
Is it the same wetlands that we saw in the park? Because where it inspired you to write this story?
Yes, I'm actually glad. I'm glad that you mentioned that. I wrote this story because it was inspired by something that actually happened. So, were you there that day when we were? I think it was we were hanging out with
No, I wasn't.
with John's all of John's siblings and you and your sister in Rockwood.
oh yeah.
And we decided to go to one place where there was kind of like a platform that we would walk on.
Yeah,
but it
the
was,
rickety bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which was like very similar to the one that I described in the story. But I remember that there actually is a plaque somewhere that actually, like, there's graffiti on it.
Yeah.
So like there's other words, but like the only thing that wasn't graffitied is like the single term, like the value of wetlands.
That is
so I was
real.
like-
Oh my gosh. that is really cool, Dylan.
Thank you. I
That
appreciate that.
that was wow.
All right, Dylan, would you like to finish this off with the question of the day?
Yes, I would. The question of the day will be, what is a short horror story that you would recommend to other people? And would you be willing to share a scary story with us that you have written? Thank you guys. As always, like and subscribe, and have a crabby morning.
Peace out.
Boo.